Welcome to the Town of Tooele Falls Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. We will be having a public hearing on 3 items and then a regular scheduled meeting, December the 8th, 2021, 6 p.m. We do have a quorum, so I would like for someone to make a motion for the approval of the agenda or adoption of the agenda. Second. And all in favor? And then the approval of the minutes from the public hearing and the regular meeting of November 10th, 2021. Copy of those are in your packet. Would you like to make a motion? Okay. And second. The fourth item on the agenda is a public hearing to repeal the soil and erosion sedimentation control ordinance and amend the zoning ordinance regarding the land disturbance activity.
Is that what we talked about last time?
It's been about 2-3 months ago.
Well, we set the public hearing.
Set the public hearing, yeah. Yes, so the public hearing, the changes on that is to amend section 512, that all land disturbing activity as applicable shall comply with the state of Georgia soil and erosion and sedimentation status found in OCGA 12-7-1.
What is that?
It's where we're following the state recommendations. And then the second part of that is to amend section 2003 to read, when required by the state status of the OCGA 12-7-1, a copy of the land disturbing activity permit shall be presented and filed with the planning and zoning administration prior to the activity commencing. And then all land disturbing activity permits shall be obtained from and shall be enforced by the Georgia Environmental Protection Division. So those are the 3 things that we are making a recommendation to the city council. Does anyone in the audience have a statement to make on these changes? This is a public hearing.
And the mayor's here to present the application.
Okay, that'd be great.
Information, we have to answer any questions. But, so the presentation would just be, this is the application the council discussed. That they wanted to make a change, make these changes. A lot of these changes were actually made back in 2000, when we decided not to be an administrative issuing authority. But we didn't go into our ordinances and take that out like we should have. So we're trying to correct that now. The council, when we discussed it, said that they agree we need to leave it that way because we really don't have the resources to try to enforce some of this. And our existing land disturbing permit or land disturbing ordinance was in line with what the state had anyway. So we were mirroring what they had already. So when we stopped being an issuing authority, by repealing that, we're just falling under the state's guideline. And we no longer going to try to enforce that. And we'll rely on the EPD to do their part.
Is this the way that it's been? Is this the way that it is now?
Essentially, it's the way we've been treating it. Because there's so much, there's uncertainty because we've got a law, we've got an ordinance, but we don't have a way to issue, we really don't issue permits, but we're sitting on people that have to have a permit. So we're trying to say, if you need a permit, go to the state and get it. And you go by the state's guidelines, and that way we're not having to mess with it anymore, we're not worried about it. And we don't have people getting confused coming to us, trying to get permits that we don't know, we have issued some permits. But
So what this says, if someone wants to have land disturbance, they go to the state.
if the state requires, which should be more than a half acre, anything above a half acre, which is what our ordinance read anyway, then you'd have to go to the state to get your permit.
And then if they follow the rules of the state is the one that's responsible. Well, isn't that the way it's been?
But it just wasn't written in the ordinance. It was changed back in 2000.
About 2000, yeah.
But the ordinance didn't follow that. So. the
So
town
people
will
have still
follow.
had to come to us and get a land disturbing permit regardless of whether they needed one from the state, because our ordinance said you had to have a land disturbing permit from the city. So they're having to essentially do it.
So now all of this will be done by the state.
Right.
If it's above a half acre.
You know, I don't really like the way the state's done the land disturbance.
Well, the way they do it though is the way we would enforce it too, if we were the local issuing authority, because we still go under the Erosion and Sediment Control Act that is from the state. So if we had somebody that was certified to enforce it, they would be going under the same guidelines as the state uses. Because there's some things under that, threshold that you can do without having to get your land. You still have to use your best management practices to keep the soil and erosion under control on your own lot, but as far as getting the permit.
So this really says that it's in the ballpark of the state.
Any other discussion of that?
Position,
To do the opposition.
Anyone with an opposition of these changes?
Anybody online that wants to speak in opposition?
Well, what if there is a question about the problem? Who do we go to?
Our EPD.
Remember those guys that came, that boy and girl that was
Yeah.
here back then? That was, one of them would be the
Be
one.
Heather.
What do
Heather
they
be
have?
our first point of contact
Sheila was it? I mean,
For now,
for now.
it changes a lot.
It does.
Yeah,
And if Heather's
We've
not
had-
available, somebody else.
I think 3 people.
Okay. With no opposition, we'll move on to the number 5 and the public hearing to amend the zoning and ordinance regarding the setback requirement in certain zoning districts. Do you want to?
Yeah, so as we're going through a lot of these zoning ordinances and as things come up, we run into little issues in our zoning administrator, Linda, had pointed out that we had, in our property setbacks, we had a district highway business that was more restrictive than the business district on the side setbacks. And then we've also noticed that we've had several variance requests come in asking for front setbacks off the road to be reduced. And as you go around town, the 35-foot setback from a road seemed to be a little excessive. So she made the recommendation of going by, I think the council, everybody decided to go by whatever Hickory Nut Mountains was, and that was 20 feet not from the road, but the setback from your property line that faces the road. You'll be 20 feet back from your property line. So we're still, however wide the road is irrelevant. It's from your property line that faces the road. We'll reduce that to 20 feet instead of 35 feet. And then in the highway business district, we wanted to reduce the side and back setbacks to like 1 foot or so, because the highway business was already 0 feet from the side and 5 feet from the rear. So the council decided to make the application to amend this to reduce those down to 15 from streets, the street property line, and 1 foot from the side and back property lines.
Where is the street property line?
Depending on where you are, Hickory Nut Mountain is roughly going to be 20 feet off. We've got a 40-foot right of way going up Hickory Nut Mountain Road up until you get to Tallulah View and Tallulah Point. Those, one of them reduces to 30-foot, and I've seen a map that shows 40 foot on the other, but I thought both of them reduced to 30 foot. So basically, if you center line of the road, you'd be 20 feet off the center line. It should be about where your property line is on Hickory Nut Mountain.
Okay, let me just repeat that. So the property line is from the center of the road.
Property line is established by your plat.
So if you've got a 40-foot, the city owns or has a right of way of 40 foot on the road, 20 on each side, and then your property line is right here, then you would go back 15 foot,
It'd be 20 feet, no
20
residential.
foot.
So the reason you don't know from, you have to refer to your plat. You're gonna have to go by your plat, because as roads get paved and get repaved, sometimes they shift just a little one way or the other. So measuring dead from the center of the road isn't gonna be an accurate location for a property. That's just gonna give you a rough estimate. So you have to go by your plat, where your pins are, and that'll set that's your property line and the city's property line. And then you go back, the residents go 20 feet back from that line.
You still own that property, it's just a setback that you can't build or have certain things.
It's a utility easement.
So it's 20
Yeah.
feet on both sides. It's 20 feet here.
Yeah, this is
20
the center.
feet here, and that's the center. And then my property would start right, or anybody's property would start just right at, or beyond that.
Yeah, if that's what your plat says. And most likely it is. I mean,
Yeah, when he platted Hickory Nut Mountain, that's where the property lines were, right at the right of way.
So the property starts here and goes to the next property line.
so you just can't build or do certain things in the setback, and that's what we're changing. It used to be 35, and they've reduced it down. We're asking to reduce it down to 20. So it's less stringent on the property.
Harry's house is 5 feet from the property line.
Exactly.
But I've seen property
So if they
plats
ever
up here
came
that
through
look
the
different
ditch
too.
Yeah.
Some of the plots are not, I mean, they're just different, including my lawn.
Yeah, there,
So if they ever wanted to go to city water, they'd be tearing up my front yard.
I think there's a water line running down through there somewhere.
That'd be great.
I'm not sure which side of the road it's on.
One question I have on the sensitive land
Okay.
setbacks. There's no residential houses allowed to be built on sensitive land. That land needs to be retracted from the sensitive land. And then that structure needs to be built on there, but that land can't be included in sensitive land. It says that in Georgia law. So in other words, if you want to put a house, a homestead or a house in sensitive land, you can do that, but that land has to be annexed from the sensitive land. It can't be part of the sensitive land.
No,
Our sensitive land district is different than what you're talking about.
yeah, our
Okay,
So that's the zoning district for
Okay.
us.
okay, that's a clarification for me.
Yeah, the sensitive land and flood hazard are almost overlays that exist, and sensitive land determination was based on slope of the
Okay,
land. So, in fact, in 1980, when they first made our zoning map, everything out here was sensitive land. Then they started changing it to R1 and some other things by 85. So, so yeah, as far as our district goes, you can build in sensitive land area, but I think most of our sensitive land is state park and national forest.
That's what I was gonna ask,
In
what
which
is
case-
sensitive land?
I forget the definition. There's a definition up in the
In your
definition
book,
section.
you have it in
in
your
your-
binder.
Yeah, I
Fine.
know.
Yeah, look it up in there, it'll find sensitive land, and then there's a section in the zoning. I don't know the number, that gives a little more detail of what you can and can't do in sensitive land. We've got, that's where one of our tree ordinances does exist, is in sensitive land districts. You can't do, you can only do certain things, so. So you can build, but I think, just off the top of my head, that most of our sensitive land is back over by the gorge area, and it's mostly gonna be national forest or state park or Georgia Power.
And I think the road by the camp. too.
Over by the camp. So there's not a whole lot of sensitive land that would be affected by this right now, so. So So the council wanted to apply to change.
Any more statements made on that from the board? Any oppositions?
Anyone on Zoom want to speak in opposition? Or in favor?
Oh, I forgot that first one.
Or anybody in favor of the first ordinance? We forgot to ask that. No one's in favor.
The next item on the agenda is to amend the zoning ordinance regarding the time for which the Planning and Zoning Commission has to issue a recommendation.
So again, we have had some question about how to proceed with this particular ordinance. We've had several applications come into planning and zoning, and we don't know if we should, if you guys would only have 30 days to make your recommendation to the council from the point of the application or from the time of the public hearing. It seems, in council's opinion, that it would be better to give you guys 30 days from the time of the public hearing so that you can get your input, get everything said. Recently, you guys have been having to hand down a decision within one day. So you got to make that same decision the same night. It's like tonight, for example. So the council thinks that it would be wisest to grant you guys a 30-day amount of time to come up with, to have some discussion, get more feedback from the public, and then make the final decision and then hand that to the council. So that's why that happens.
I believe that was the intent originally, but it's just not clear. It says, talks about the public hearing and planning and zoning, and then talks about 30 days, but it doesn't, definitely say the 30 days from the public hearing. Just want to clarify.
Does the board have any discussion on that? Any opposition? Anything from the web?
Anybody on Zoom want to speak in opposition or in favor?
So this will close our public hearing, and we're going to a regular scheduled meeting. If no one has any other statements to make. There is no old business to discuss tonight, but we do have new business. The new business would be on the recommendation for the ordinance to repeal the soil and erosion sedimentation control ordinance and amend the zoning ordinance regarding land disturbance activity. We've already had our public hearing on that. This would be to make a recommendation back to the city council. If someone would like to make a motion,
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
second. All in favor? All right. Next item is a deliberation on recommendations of the ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance regarding setbacks requirements in certain zoning districts with the town of Tallulah Falls. Any discussion? Someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Yeah.
To approve.
Yeah, that's on both of these.
Do you like to second it? Okay, and all in favor? All right, the third item is recommendations for the ordinance to amend the zoning and ordinance regarding the time of which the Planning and Zoning Commission has to issue a recommendation. Any discussion?
I'll make a motion, unless you got something to say.
Do you?
No, I don't.
You good?
Motion's made. Second. And then all in favor? Great. The floor is now open for any discussion.
Well, this is not about this, but I wanted to ask about the tree ordinance again. I asked about it in every meeting. What's the status of it?
I'm curious about it as well.
What is the status of it?
We didn't have at first we didn't have what you guys had recommended. We didn't have all of it. So I think we've got that now.
We've got the minutes, so.
What did you have?
The changes that you all made
The
after
changes
your
that you all
public.
made.
hearing.
I thought we gave that to them. No,
Not officially, so,
Some of the minutes had to be approved prior to making that official.
so
okay,
then.
so what's the status
Okay,
of?
so then we went ahead, even though we didn't have everything in the council, based on what we did have, wanted to set up a workshop and talk about some of it.
The council?
Yeah, the council is.
Okay.
So we've got a new council member coming on board in January. We're keep getting him up to speed now with some of it, with all the different things that have been going on. So I'm hoping we can have something worked up and have a workshop February, maybe January, if we can get one scheduled mid-January. We just gotta get our schedules together and see what we can come up with so we can have that workshop. Then based on that workshop, the council will make the decision whether to send that back to you guys for revision and review, or whether they'll go ahead and have their public hearing and move forward with it from there, depending on what changes are made. So,
You know, we started that in January of last year.
yeah, we also started a sign ordinance and this Lannister permit ordinance last year. And we have still haven't got our sign ordinance taken care of, that the council actually asked you guys to do. So I was vice chair when we took it on, so,
I don't know
no,
about
no,
that.
that was after, I'm sorry. That was after I was off the council. They sent the sign ordinance and the land disturbing permit ordinance back down and actually charged y'all with coming up with something. The tree ordinance is something y'all came up with on your own. And the council's willing to look at it. So I don't feel it's fair to be trying to hold our feet to the fire when planning and zoning still hasn't accomplished the task that the council has assigned to you to do.
I wasn't even aware of it.
I know you weren't.
Oh, I would obviously get it done, but I
Yeah.
wasn't even aware.
Yeah, I understand.
of it.
I thought you had everything you needed.
The sign ordinance,
I'm sorry, what?
sign ordinance.
Oh, I don't know anything about the sign.
Can we put that on the next agenda for January to start working on the sign ordinance?
Yeah, I don't even know what the parameters
I
are,
don't know anything
what
about
they were,
that.
where we want to go with it.
It should be in our book.
It's in your books. If for some reason it's not, let me know. but it
Yeah, I
should
don't
be in your
think it
budget.
is, I'll look.
It should be.
What is the council's wishes? Is it to restrict it or
It's in the
to
book.
list?
It's to fix it. What we've got is, we've got a zoning ordinance about signs and we've got a regular ordinance about signs. The zoning ordinance, you guys have to take care of, the council can't do it on their own. So the council said, well, let's just put them both, get them where they line up and they're not as confusing. Wendy can help you a little bit. And then, GMRC has offered to come in and help you guys with that also, because there are a couple of pitfalls when you start getting with sign ordinances. We cannot regulate what's put on the sign.
That'd
I
be
think
Adam
that's what I
Pizarro,
understand.
That's GMC.
Adam, GMRC, Georgia Mountain Regional Commission.
I don't
And
know
Hazel,
anything
his
about
name's
that.
Hazel.
Pizarro.
Yeah, he's the guy I talked to. He said he'd be happy to come in, work with you, because you don't want to step into, because it's a constitutional problem, a First Amendment issue, if you tell someone what they can and can't put on a sign. So I don't think.
Been down
our
that road.
ordinance- Yeah. So our sign ordinance doesn't, I don't think hits that, but I think we've got a few inconsistencies between the two. And we need to
Well,
iron
we've
that out.
got a boilerplate sign ordinance that came from wherever, and it just doesn't exactly fit here.
So does it get into sizes and heights and, yeah, I
It
mean,
gets in a few of
there's
those
a lot,
things.
there's a lot of that involved with it.
Yeah, it does.
So it's
And
something,
then
the council.
eliminated certain things that you
Yeah.
can.
But I mean, some things like all the little popsicle stand, those kind of
Yeah.
signs, I mean, those aren't really addressed, whether we allow them, we don't allow them. You know, I think there may be something that says you can't put them in right away, but.
Yeah.
And the whole thing needs to have a reviewed and revamped kind of thing.
And then we have to have a hearing on that, obviously.
Okay.
Yeah, but I
Once
mean, you
we
can
get
take,
to-
there's no big rush. So you guys take your time doing all, coming up with what you want to present and then have your public hearing it, taking months.
So have there been complaints about the signs?
There's always
Mary Beth.
complaints about signs.
Mary
In
Beth,
I
every
like those
city.
cute little signs,
In
actually.
every city.
and those, I don't see a problem. So I would say, I would guide you down the path of not making it any more restrictive, but taking what we've got, clean it up, get the language to where it's consistent between the two sections. And just something that would work for the town. And
Something simple,
something simple.
you can understand.
Well, I'm gonna have to probably put something in there about maintenance on signs. Because if you're gonna put like, wire signs and stuff up like that, let's make sure that they're still standing and they're not laying down on the ground, things like that.
Well,
Because
those
then it
should
starts
be-
to look like trash, you know what I mean?
Those should be considered temporary signs that have a time limit. So that doesn't happen.
Right,
So that's,
I
that's,
agree.
that's what y'all need to get
Okay.
into, get the
Well,
group
you can
together.
see, I mean, we do pretty good
Yeah.
once we know where we're going.
Yeah.
We just
So
kind of need to be
Yeah,
shut
I've had a
in.
lot of turnover.
we've
since
had
I
a
was
lot of
first in
turnover.
it.
In fact,
So
Barbara,
It's probably the only.
Barbara's the only one left on the planning and zoning that was here when the council asked y'all to take that on, so.
Well, Sissy obviously has some experience in it, which is gonna help, so.
But I didn't want to push it. I didn't want to push that issue prior to now because you guys had so much going on already. I was like, we can wait on that. Because it's not a hard thing. It's not a urgency. There's no urgency behind it, so.
And eventually, we're gonna go through every ordinance. I mean,
But-
I'm sure every
We need to look at them.
zoning ordinance needs to be looked at and up to date.
But I mean, there is with the trees though. I mean,
Yeah, we're-
comparing the signs to the trees is kind of like apples and oranges.
Right, well, we're still, it's not,
I hear you.
we're not doing it.
I know.
We're getting there. We gotta have our workshop and then we'll get it back to you and get it taken care of. Like I said, we have so many other things. We're having a balance. And we didn't have what we needed at one point. The council decided they want to do a workshop and we're just going to schedule that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so we'll definitely work in that direction.
So next meeting, we can start talking about signs. And that'll give us a month to look some things up where other people have had problems and then we can address.
Like Clayton.
Yeah. An example.
What I don't want to see is like, we go to Orange Beach. You can't see the signs because they all have to be this high off the ground. You can't
Look
see,
inside.
you don't know where McDonald's or the hotel is.
Yeah, it is. That gets, I know Zaxby's had a hard time, getting their signs in the right place at the right time.
So that's one of them we get a little tricky with. So you just want to make sure you get,
Yeah, and
time.
verbiage on the
Country
sign.
signs, actually.
do what?
I like the cute country signs, people for that. I do.
Let's see if there's a way to make allowance for it. So,
You talking about like little ice cream signs?
Everything.
Everything.
Like the guy who was swearing, he's got him up for a while.
Yeah.
You're gonna have an accident because you're reading signs.
yeah, yeah.
Well, that's true. But in certain zoning too, like the home business, that might be allowable where it's not. I'm thinking about, so. Okay, anything else for discussion? Take a motion to adjourn.
Emotion.
Second. All in favor? Adjourn.
Okay.
Just-